Good afternoon, FDP members and my federal agency colleagues. Happy New Year. It's great to be back online with another federal agency update. I know that this typically is a highlight and a significant opportunity to disseminate information from the federal sponsors to the university community and nonprofit performer community. And do a lot of live Q&A. So thank you for FDP for hosting this webinar. So the format we'll follow is the agency will make their agency update presentation, and then we will allow time, 5 to 10 minutes at the end of each agency presentation to allow for Q&A specific to the agency topics that were presented. If time permits, we will do a final round of Q&A at the end, but I will tell you we have a packed schedule. And so if you have questions, again, please submit it through the Q&A function, and we'll address as many as we can after each agency presents. Thank you. So with that, our first agency, it's great to have the Department of Agriculture back. NIFA will be presenting, and I'm going to turn it over to Katrina Hansen. Over.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am Katrina Hansen. I'm the Policy and Oversight Division Director in the Office of Grants and Financial Management at NIFA. It's a pleasure to represent the U.S. Department of Agriculture at these agency updates. I know we may have missed a few of the last few, but we intend to be here so to help to answer your questions. Matthew Faulkner, who is our Deputy Director for the Office of Grants and Financial Management, is unable to make it today, but I'm here to represent him. I know that we have a number of USDA colleagues that are also in attendance today. I see there's over 500 attendees, so I can't tell you exactly who all's on, but I know that there are a number of my colleagues out there. So we're going to focus in on USDA NIFA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture. If you have additional questions for other agencies, we're happy to help to try to route those to other agencies within USDA. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So we have had a year of transformations. We now have 2 locations for NIFA. We have our offices still in Washington, D.C. That's a smaller group of folks that work there now. And we have established our new building, which is at 805 Pennsylvania Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm happy to say that I am one of the new employees with NIFA. I've been here since March. I came from the Farm Service Agency, where I held a number of positions in their headquarters, from National Program Manager to Chief of Staff for Policy and Programs. So I'm excited to come to NIFA. We've been working very hard to help to transform the agency in its new locations and with its new staff. There's still a lot of work to do, and we want to do that in partnership with you. So just, if you have ideas of what we can do better, we're happy to hear it. We have received many comments through our Project Cafe initiative, which some of you may have participated in, on how we can improve our processes. And we've already acted on some of those comments, and we continue to act on them. And you'll see, positive changes, I believe, over the next few years that as we implement many of those changes. All right, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a little difficult to read, but basically it's our organizational chart for NIFA. Our Office of Grants and Financial Management is in line with our other institutes, program institutes. Matthew Faulkner, again, is our Deputy Director for the Office of Grants and Financial Management. Calvin Mitchell is our new Division Director for Awards Management. So that's making the awards and doing any modifications. They provide a lot of support to our partners as they engage on their grants. And our Financial Management Division Director is Waits Rollerson. That group does a lot of work supporting the financial side of the grants implementation, including working to support the ASAP and getting the funds actually into your hands. So the release of those funds from the grant is really the major task of that group, that they do a lot of other things to support grant making at NIFA. My division, the Policy and Oversight Division, is basically establishing all the policy, putting out the RFAs, and then doing the oversight on grants. And we'll go a little farther into these divisions so you can have an idea of what we're doing. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just a little closer in of our setup within the Office of Grants and Financial Management. And I know since we've had a lot of turnover of staff that many of you would be interested in who's doing what now at NIFA. So again, Calvin is our Division Director for the Awards Management Division. Waits, Rollerson, it's William Rollerson, he goes by Waits. He's our Division Director for Financial Management. And then I'm the Division Director for Policy and Oversight. We still have a few leadership positions within OGFM to fill, but we are about 70% staffed within NIFA and our OGFM side. Okay, so you can go to the next slide. All right, so our Awards Management Division manages all elements of the grant life cycle. We have about $1.7 billion per year in federal financial assistance. And we are working across the agency to try to make sure that there's financial stability and management capability for those prospective grantees, that they understand the requirements of our NIFA programs. They are helping in concert with our policy and oversight staff to look at laws and appropriations language to ensure stewardship of that federal financial assistance. And they're really working to develop that and maintain effective relationships with our client institutions. You can go to the next slide. All right, so Financial Management Division. We have two branches here, the Accounting Operations branch and the Financial Analysis branch. So again, they're recording those obligations of the grants in the financial system, and then they're making sure that the money gets to that grantee. All right, next slide, please. And then within my branch, the Policy and Oversight Division, again, we're doing requests for applications, we're doing regulations, analysis, and directives related to any changes that occur. And then we have a business process and customer system interactions team that is being stood up now that will basically help to provide that link between the policy and the systems that we're using. And then we have our oversight branch. They are doing compliance reviews, and we just identified the folks for this year that are going to have compliance reviews, and that's published on our website. We have internal controls, which includes our enterprise risk management, our audits team, which is looking at all types of audits related to the agency. And then we have an indirect cost team on our oversight. USDA has a slightly different indirect cost policy according to statute. And so we engage within that branch. And we have set up a mailbox, standard mailbox for folks to request their NICRAs, their negotiated indirect cost rates, and other types of information related to indirect costs. We work in partnership with the Department of Interior as well as we execute our indirect cost rates. All right, so the next slide, please. So as many of you, we have had many challenges over this past year, and since I came on board in March, I have not met my staff in person. We have all been working virtually since that time that I came on board in March. And so we have really worked efficiently and effectively through teleworking, however. So I think in some cases we've been able to even get some more work done working remotely. We did have all of our 2020 one-year competitive grants were awarded and all of our capacity grants awarded. We responded to new needs of our customers. I know many of you probably participated in the teleconferences that we had, webinars that we had related to COVID-19. We received a lot of your input and provided response as quickly as possible to the different situations that you were having. We continue to do that and support those individual needs related to COVID-19. We did implement the OMB flexibilities in response to COVID-19, and then we have been addressing many of those issues on a case-by-case basis now that some of that, much of that has expired. All right, next slide, please. So this slide is just to kind of say more of what I said. We're basically supporting the COVID-19 impacts, and we understand that there's continued impacts, and we prioritize the health and safety of our research community. We're committed to providing the most flexibilities that we can to support that health and safety of our applicants, our grantees, and our employees. We also have our coronavirus website set up. So if you have not visited that, that's at nifa.usda.gov/coronavirus, and all of our special policies related to coronavirus, as well as links to other websites related to COVID, are on that web page. Next slide, please. A few other updates. Again, we have about 70% of our vacancies filled within the Office of Grants and Financial Management. We have our awards management division is nearly fully staffed, and so is our financial management division. I am still working to staff up our policy and oversight staff, and so we continue to push forward on filling those vacancies and working to be the most efficient organization that we can be for you. We were able to execute our Q1 funding for the FY21 capacity grants or formula grants. So those have all been awarded under the continuing resolution numbers. We're right now assessing what we've received under the final omnibus, and we'll be making adjustments to the next quarter's funding in relation to those final numbers that we got through the omnibus. We have been able to, as a part of a greater effort that we did internally, we've been establishing a schedule of program implementation from RFA to award that goes across our agencies so that we can help to make our processes more efficient. We were able to come up with an upcoming RFA calendar for this year. So that is on the NIFA website. If you haven't seen that, I encourage you to visit that as well. That's at nifa.usda.gov/upcoming-RFA-calendar. And we did update terms and conditions in coordination with NSF and NIH and many other agencies. Where we had broader research terms and conditions, we worked in collaboration with them to get those updated, as well as our agency-specific terms and conditions, and our other terms and conditions for some other programs that we have that don't use the research terms and conditions. Those were updated in November to align with the 2 CFR 200 updates that came out. We are in the process of updating our policy guide for NIFA. First, we're going to work to implement those 2 CFR 200 updates into the policy guide. And that's, as of today, is with OMB for clearance. We also are working on a broader effort to update that policy guide and likely our regulations as well. And we hope to have updates to that policy guide happen on an annual basis and include partner input opportunities. So be aware that those opportunities will be coming out and published so that you can see them. And we want to get on a more annual basis with updating our policy guide so you can see that. I know one thing that we are doing within this revision of the policy guide is splitting up the different sections so they're easier to access through our website. So that was one big comment that we received through Project Cafe, was that it's a big document, it's hard to navigate. So we anticipate that quick win to happen pretty soon as we can get the comments back from OMB on that policy guide update. Just one final reminder on ASAP that access for drawdowns is suspended the last 4 working days of each month. We like to give this reminder to folks every presentation that we give so that you don't get caught in that window. There was a slightly longer window at the change of the the change of the calendar year. So I'm sure that you were aware of that as well. All right, next slide. Okay, if you want assistance with competitive grants, we have our awards at USDA.gov email box where folks are monitoring that and assigning that out on a regular basis for response. We have capacity grant questions at USDA.gov. That's a separate team, and so we have a separate mailbox for it. If you have ASAP questions, that's ASAP customer service at USDA.gov. And if you have indirect cost questions or want to negotiate an indirect cost rate, indirect cost inquiries at USDA.gov is the best mailbox to go to. Next slide, please. And if all that fails, we do have senior staff in place within the Office of Grants and Financial Management. We don't encourage everybody to go to this as the first stop because our mailboxes are pretty full as it is, but we definitely, if you're having a problem, if you're not able to get the assistance that you think you deserve out of those mailboxes that I listed on the previous slide, we are here. And if you have, big ideas for how we can do things better, we're here to talk about that as well. So just know that we are definitely open to talking with you and trying to, establish relationships and also to try to make the best and most efficient work of what we need to do. Next slide, please. And then these are just the agency-wide resources. Again, there is a coronavirus website. We do have frequently asked questions on that website as well. Our NIFA email newsletter, if you are not on the NIFA update, that's a weekly newsletter that goes out and it provides updates on what requests for applications are coming out, what is new at NIFA. I encourage you to join that as well. So that's our NIFA update. There's also some links to USDA messages, USDA resources, and external resources on that coronavirus website if you need to go there. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the new NIFA, or transform to serve you better. And, we're going to continue to transform, and we're excited to hear your comments and questions. So with that, I'll stop for questions.
Thanks, Katina. This is Deb Raffi. We have 4 questions. So let me start with the first one. Will NIFA be releasing more specific instructions relating to the NEFA Title IX Sexual Harassment Requirements Memo. The memo is dated December 17th, 2020, is somewhat vague, and specific directions regarding about whom to report, a secure mechanism for reporting, and definitions would be helpful. Over.
All right, I will take that comment back to our new Civil Rights Director. Her name is Drenda Williams, and we'll try to get a response back out to this group.
Okay, question number 2. Past USDA RFPs have had vague language on voluntary match, stating along the lines that while not required, voluntary match will be considered in funding decisions. Many institutions have policies disallowing voluntary match. Would this be an area that USDA could visit and bring more in alignment with uniform guidance? Over.
Well, we'll definitely take a look at that. We do have, some grants that require match and other grants where that match is voluntary. We'll take a look at it and see what can be done there.
Okay, next question. Does the alignment of 2 CFR 200 include reduction or removal of cost share requirements? Similar question.
No, it does not. I know that there's some specific programs that have match requirements addressed within the appropriations language. So those programs will be working to address changes in match related to that in our RFAs that we publish, but there's no significant change for us related to the 2 CFR 200 updates related to match or cost share.
Okay, I have 2 more questions, and I remind the audience that any questions not answered after these next 2, we can follow up directly with the agency. So next question is, our EOAA officer has told us about a new requirement to notify NEFA of any sexual harassment, administrative action, or disciplinary action within 3 business days. But this hasn't been implemented in any of our grant terms. We furnish extensive comments to other agencies about the logistics and questions about definitions associated with this type of requirement. Can you tell us what you are planning in this regard?
Okay, again, I'm going to provide a response back to the group after consulting with Drenda Williams, who's our Civil Rights Director. I want to make sure that we get you the right answer. So we will follow up after this meeting. Okay.
The final comment is just some feedback. Excellent and super useful and informative presentation. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Katina. Appreciate your participation, and it's great to have NEFA back to the FDP. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our next agency, which will be the National Science Foundation, and the presenter, Jeremy Leffler.
Thanks very much, Debbie. Good morning, everybody. My name's Jeremy Leffler. I work in the policy office at NSF, have for quite some time now. And I want to wish you all Happy New Year. Glad to be back at FDP. I know, like Katina mentioned, for NIFA, NSF also has a number of people that are in the audience of more than 600, it looks like. So as they would be with an in-person conference, NSF really does send a number of people to this conference and these meetings. So in addition to today, I just want to highlight a couple of things that are on the agenda this week. There is a session tomorrow on foreign influence that Gene Feldman from the policy office at NSF will be participating in. So I would recommend that session tomorrow on foreign influence. And then on Wednesday afternoon, as part of the ERA session on there will be a session on Science CV and the adoption of Science CV for the biographical sketch and current and pending support proposal sections. And this session is going to go more into the technical implementation of this and the common issues that we've seen and the questions that we've been answering that have been coming in. So if you could go to the next slide, please. I just have a couple of things to speak with you today about. That is the implementation of the schedule of the implementation for the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide. And then I'm going to briefly go through some of the proposed changes for that next guide. I do have a bit to update you on research.gov implementation, and then I'm providing you with a number of resources as well. So next slide, please. So typically, NSF would be implementing a new PAP guide right around this time in the new year. We would have announced a guide back in October timeframe, and then after 90 days, implementing it towards the end of this month, beginning of next month. But we're not doing that this year. We're moving to a different schedule. So before the holiday season really began, back on December 14th of 2020, we published a draft PAP guide in the Federal Register for public comment. And that date kicks off a 60-day public comment period, after which we will look at those comments, resolve those comments that are submitted both by external stakeholders as well as internal stakeholders from NSF. We need to receive your comments by February 12th, 2021. And so as far as the schedule, we're anticipating a spring 2021 release with an implementation in October of 2021. And so until that time, the current PAP guide, which is 20-1, continues to be in effect. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to go through some of the proposed changes that are in the draft PAP guide. And as I've just mentioned, we're in this 60-day comment period for you to respond to the changes that NSF is proposing. You may also use this as an opportunity to let NSF know of any other areas of policy that you and your institutions believe NSF should consider. The PAP guide itself that's in the Federal Register, you'll see it's a PDF document, and we've highlighted the changes that are listed on the screen throughout the document. And I'm just going to give you a cursory overview of these changes. Later on in the presentation, I've provided links both to the draft PAP guide and to the Federal Register notice. Those will be on my final slide. But if you're looking for them right now, you can go to the Policy Office website and you'll find links to both the draft PAP guide and the Federal Register notice. The first one is the implementation of 2 CFR 200. And what we've done, and you'll see highlighted throughout the document, are the references that have been updated to align with the November 12th, 2020 implementation of the uniform guidance. Secondly, we've added a planning proposal as a new proposal type. And when you read the PAP guide, you'll see that what we're calling a planning proposal is a type of proposal used to support the initial conceptualization, planning, and collaboration activities that aim to formulate new and sound plans for larger scale projects in emerging research areas for future submission of a proposal to an NSF program. And you'll see also outlined here that requests can be for up to $100,000 and 2 years in duration. Again, I want to stress that these are proposed changes. This is not anything that's available right now. These are proposed changes for you to digest and to comment and send your comments on to NSF. Within the travel proposal section, we are specifying that a meeting organizer for a travel proposal must have a written policy or code of conduct that addresses sexual harassment, other forms of harassment, and sexual assault. And that includes also an accessible means for reporting violations. We will not be asking that the proposer submit these policies to NSF for review. We've added context language for all of the proposal sections. So for each required section of an NSF proposal, it will include contextual information that identifies the purpose of each section and how NSF uses the information that you're providing. And this began with us identifying how NSF uses the biographical sketch and current and pending support sections, and we've applied that to each of the required proposal sections. We've made further clarifications for the current and pending support section. We have received a lot of questions on current and pending support. Questions about both the policy and the technical implementation of this proposal section. And what we've done is we're incorporating additional information into the PAP guide from the frequently asked questions document that is published on the Policy Office website. And that is just really done to help get more eyes on this information and to assist the community with completing this section of the proposal. We've made some clarifications of funding support in the introduction section of the PAP guide. This section on the type of research supported by NSF was clarified, particularly in the area of the biological sciences. We're adding information about career life balance supplements, and this implements the requirements for preparation and submission of career life balance supplements to existing awards that was laid out in the recently released NSF Dear Colleague letter on career life balance supplements. The Dear Colleague letter outlines an opportunity for supplemental funding to help researchers who are confronted with a short-term increase in dependent care responsibilities to ensure that research activities that are supported by an NSF award can continue. And finally, we've increased the visibility of research.gov throughout the document. This includes updating terminology and putting in links to various sections throughout the document to align with our goal of migrating from Fastlane to research.gov for proposal submission in 2022. Again, this is just a brief summary of these proposed changes to the PAP guide, and I would really ask that you go to the draft PAP guide, look at the highlighted sections, and then have your institution submit questions, concerns, suggestions to NSF by the February 12th date. Next slide, please. So this slide talks about the important notice number 147. This should not be new news to any of you, since this important notice was issued back in September of last year, and it was issued to inform the community about transitioning the preparation and submission of all proposals incrementally from Fastlane to research.gov in 2022. Now, funding opportunities clearly specify whether submission via research.gov is available or required. The important notice also indicated that some funding opportunities will begin to require the use of research.gov and will not be available for submission in Fastlane. And this has already started with the core biological sciences program solicitations that do not have deadlines. And other programs have also begun designating programs that will require submission by research.gov. It's important to note here that grants.gov will still be an option. We're not removing that as an option, but please, the takeaway here is really make sure that you're reading the program solicitation, and in the important notices section of those solicitations will indicate whether or not submission via research.gov is required, and you will begin to see more of those in the coming weeks and months. Next slide, please. So up until November of 2020, you could only use research.gov to submit research type proposals. That has changed, and you may now submit rapid, eager, and raise proposals in research.gov. Keep in mind that those come with a number of automated compliance checks that are included for all three of those, including project description page lengths, total amounts that you may request for each of those types of proposals, and the duration limits. Those are all built into research.gov. I want to note that the policy office looks at every solicitation that comes through our office to make sure that research.gov has the capability for submission. Solicitations that, for example, require a letter of intent, or that require a preliminary proposal, or that even have, for example, a project description that is over 15 pages, those types of things must still be submitted using Fastlane. And you'll notice that in those solicitations, we remove a lot of the language that includes information about being able to submit via research.gov. When you're in research.gov, in what we call this wizard, you note that all proposal types are listed there, but only those that are currently supported are available for selection, meaning that unavailable selections are grayed out. As new proposal types are enabled, in research.gov, proposers will be able to select them. And we're targeting spring 2021 for the release of more proposal types, as well as the ability to withdraw proposals in research.gov. Next slide, please. So one of the things that the community had been asking a lot about, and we put as a priority for release, was a demonstration site, a demo site. NSF released its new research.gov demo site late last year, and it allows you to prepare and edit proposals before you prepare them in the actual system, in the actual research.gov system for submission. The demo site does not support the submission of proposals, so you can't submit them in the demo site. And it does not trigger any of the system-generated email notifications, so it won't fill up your inboxes when you're using it. The organization, there are some differences between how this demo site works and how the previous version for Fastlane worked. So the organization that you are affiliated with your NSF account profile will be incorporated when you're in the demo site, but the user role that you have will not be available in the demo site. All users who access this demo site will be given the role of PI, so it really gives you the opportunity to see the proposal preparation and submission aspect of this. All of the compliance checks that are available in the actual system are also available in the research.gov demo site. Proposals created in the demo site they'll be available for 6 months, and then they'll be deleted by NSF, and neither NSF nor users will be able to access the deleted demo proposal data. Again, if you create something in the demo site, it's not going to be available in the actual research.gov proposal submission system, and you cannot transfer information between the demo site and the actual system. But we do hope that this will be a great aid for you and your faculty as you can really begin to encourage more widespread use, because that's what we really need. We really need more people to use this system. And now that we'll have the availability of more proposal types in there, we hope that we will see more proposals being submitted in research.gov. Next slide, please. We made some changes, additional changes in research.gov, and this is based directly on feedback from the community. We removed the font compliance check warnings messages from research.gov, and this went into effect at the end of this past November. And what this does, it brings this system behavior in line with that of Fastlane, which does not check font or font size. And we felt that this may have been a hindrance to people using the new system. And we're really trying, as I just mentioned, to encourage its use as we get closer to the point of retiring Fastlane. One of the things I want to remind you is that warnings, when you get a warning in research.gov, that will not prevent submission. An error will prevent submission. The other thing that I want to mention about fonts is that the PAP guide font policy remains. We have not made any changes to that. You still must adhere to the PAP guide font policy. Next slide, please. There are lots of research.gov proposal resources already available, and they're on the site for you to use. There are resources and links within the application itself so that you don't have to go to multiple places for information when you're preparing a proposal. And we work really hard to ensure that when you see an info button or a call out box, you're going to see direct links to information in the PAP guide and to other places so that you don't have to keep going back and forth to get the information you need to fill out a particular section of the proposal. There is also information on the research.gov about proposal preparation and submission page. The resources on the about page we update on an ongoing basis. So please check back. There are FAQs by topic. There are links to videos and also links to the research.gov the automated compliance checklist. Next slide, please. There's a lot of information out there. I've tried to consolidate it on this slide for research.gov. You should consider signing up for the NSF Systems Update listserv for the latest news on research.gov and Fastlane system notifications. There, as I just mentioned, there is an automated compliance checklist, and we update these with each annual PAP guide release. The most recent were released on October 5th, 2020, and that included all of the information about compliance checks for use of an NSF approved format for the biographical sketch and current and pending support. There are FAQs organized by topic and video tutorials on the page. There's a help guide that is in the early stages of development, which is composed of tip sheets that can be standalone or be used as a consolidated resource. And finally, the NSF ERA forum listserv is also available for you. The NSF ERA forum is an opportunity for you to engage with us as we roll out new features in research.gov and other NSF systems. So I would recommend signing up for this listserv as well. Next slide, please. There are additional resources, of course. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, there is the for-comment version of the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide that is on the Policy Office website. I've also included the Federal Register notice here for you. Remember, February 12th is the closing date by which we need to receive your consolidated comments from your institutions. In November and December last year, we conducted a virtual NSF grants conference. We had great participation, and I want to thank thank you to all of you who were able to attend some or all of the sessions. We had 16 sessions and we recorded them. Those are all now available for on-demand viewing on our Policy Office Outreach website. And in addition to those on-demand videos, the accompanying presentations are also available. So we hope you'll see that as a resource for you, for your faculty, for the coming months. I also want to draw, finally, your attention to the FAQs that the Policy Office puts out. Specifically, there are proposal and award FAQs and specific FAQs for the implementation of the biographical sketch and current and pending support, or primarily current and pending support. We advise you to please take a look at these documents if you and your faculty have questions about proposal preparation. Many of the questions that we've been receiving over the past months on the biographical sketch and current and pending support, the answers can be found in these documents. So please take a look at those. Oftentimes when we give presentations and like for example, back in October when a lot of the compliance checking went into effect for the BioSketch and current and pending support, our office, we get flooded with questions. A lot of those questions are answered in these FAQ documents. So please do take a look at those. And hopefully, if your question's not there, of course, please do send your question to policy@nsf.gov. We're there for you to answer your questions. When we do have surges of questions, it can take us a little bit of time to respond, but we hope to do it as quickly as we can. So I want to thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
This is Debbie. Thank you, Jeremy. Yes, we have several questions. Let me jump right in, approximately 10. Let's see if we can keep this to 10 minutes. We are running a little bit behind. So the first question regarding research.gov, we have experienced problems using research.gov for proposal submissions when the PA allows the project description to be longer than the standard 15 pages. Will this be addressed in future releases of research.gov?
Right, so I think I mentioned this earlier. If the project description, if the program solicitation allows for a project description that is more than 15 pages, it should not be in research.gov. We try and catch all of those when we're clearing and posting solicitations. So those, if the project description is more than 15 pages, you need to use Fastlane. And we will be looking at that obviously going forward, as we'll have to integrate all of our funding opportunities into research.gov. So we'll have to account for all of these types of variances.
Thank you. Next question. How does the change in administrations and new leadership at OMB possibly impact the PAPPG guide in 2021? Might the review be reopened or immediate OMB and other executive action be incorporated?
That certainly remains to be seen. We have not been given a heads up that could be the case. We are sticking with our February 12th deadline for receiving comments. Of course, if that changes, we would communicate that broadly to the community.
Okay. The next question, I think, was related to one of your previous comments, but it's hard to tell by the question. It's simply, can you post a link to this draft? I don't know which topic they're referring to, but if that person can expand on that question.
Well, and I can certainly just let you know, if you go to the Policy Office website on nsf.gov, you will see a link to the for-comment version of a draft proposal and award policies and procedures guide, as well as a link to the Federal Register notice, which provides instructions for how to submit comments.
Okay, thank you. Next question, is the sexual harassment policy requirement only for conference grants or all NSF funded travel? In addition, how should institutions document they confirmed a policy exists?
So a couple of things. So the changes that I talked about were with respect to the draft PAP guide, which talked about travel proposals. That is simply a clarification and a change that we're making in the draft PAP guide. The sexual harassment policies and procedures have not changed and do apply to conferences. When you are submitting your proposal, you are certifying that you have a plan in place to do so. NSF is not asking for those for you to submit them, but can ask to see them if necessary.
All right, thank you. Next question. Is NSF/research.gov planning any improvements or capabilities in the future around system-to-system submissions?
That is a question I would have to take back to my colleagues in our Division of Information Systems. I don't have the answer to that one.
All right, thank you. Next question. Can you confirm that the changes to the PAP PG guide travel proposal section regarding the meetings organization's harassment policy is applicable only to travel proposals and not to all travel proposed on any standard research proposal?
That is correct.
Okay. Next question, regarding the travel proposal requirement, how would an AOR know that the meeting organizer's policy is acceptable to NSF? Would NSF consider approving or disapproving the meeting organization's policy and/or code of conduct when reviewing the budget and budget justification prior to award issuance? The proposer could provide a link to that meeting organization's policy.
So as I mentioned, we specify that you must have a plan or code of conduct, but we are not specifying in great. There are some specifications for what you have to have in there, but we are not reviewing them. We are saying that you as an institution must have that plan in place.
Okay, next question. Will Fastlane eventually be phased out totally?
Yes.
Will Fastlane be eliminated completely? That's the second question. I think that's a yes.
That is a yes.
The last question I have is, what is the best way to connect with research.gov developers with questions about how third-party application interaction with research.gov submissions?
So I would recommend there's a email alias rgov@nsf.gov, sending a message to that email alias, and it will be routed to the right person.
All right, thank you very much, Jeremy.
Sure thing.
With that, we're going to move on to NIH and Adam Graham. Handing it off to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Like Debbie said, my name is Adam Graham. I'm a grants policy officer in the Office of Policy for Extramural Research Administration. I'm here on behalf of Michelle Bowles. Next slide. Just to start out, we wanted to give you some updates on our budget. As of December 27th, we received a Consolidated Appropriations Act, which gives the NIH for fiscal year 2021 approximately $43 billion, which represents a 3% increase from fiscal year 2020. Note, as I'm sure a lot of you are accustomed to, we published several guide notices related to the release of our budget, including the fiscal policy for FY 2021, legislative mandates, updated stipend information, etc. We plan on getting these out in the next week or two, so hold tight, they are forthcoming. As part of our budget award, the salary cap level has increased for this year. Can you not see my camera? Sorry.
Thank you, Adam. We can see you now.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I thought it was on, but gotcha. Okay, yeah, as I was saying, the salary cap level for fiscal year 2021 will be increased from 197,300 to 199,300. And per the usual, we'll be issuing a guide notice for this. Note, NIH ICs are developing and posting their own funding strategies consistent with NIH goals on their websites, and any cuts to IC budgets will be approved at the central OD level to promote consistent strategies. Next slide. Okay, next we wanted to give you a few policy updates. First of, and this is consistent with what has been mentioned by the previous speakers, OMB mandated updates to 2 CFR 200 effective November 12th, 2020. In accordance with that, the federal-wide research terms and conditions have been revised, including those for NIH, and harmonized to sync with 2 CFR 200, which was revised in August. NSF is the host and maintains the research terms and conditions website on behalf of all the participating organizations. And note, NIH implementation of these federal-wide research terms and conditions is outlined in the grants policy statement, NIH grants policy statement, section 3.1. I know it's probably a question on many of your minds. The GPS update is forthcoming still. It's currently under final review with the legal folks, and we're hoping to have it out in the near future. We apologize for any delays. And note, at the bottom of these slides, a lot of them you'll see related guide notices with the link to the appropriate guide notice. Next slide. Next is an update also from the 2 CFR revisions. As part of the revisions, they added in a section on the Defense Authorization Act from fiscal year 2019, specifically prohibiting the expenditure of grant funds for covered telecommunications equipment. Note, this is the expending of grant funds, specifically for covered technologies as noted in 2 CFR 200 and will be explicitly stated in the updated GPS. Since the implementation for this revision to 2 CFR 200 was in August versus the more general implementation in November, we added a term of award that applies to all NIH grants and contracts. And note, this was highlighted in Guide Notice 41. And an additional note, there are no waivers for this statutory provision. And if you have any particular questions, we also have an FAQ, which is linked below. Next slide. But we did have two frequently asked questions that we wanted to highlight it here. One is, can an NIH grant be used to procure goods or services unrelated to telecommunication services or equipment from an entity that uses such equipment and services? The answer is yes, you can, so long as the money you're providing to the service provider does not go to pay for any of the covered telecommunications and or video equipment. The second question is, does the term of award outlined in our guide notice on this issue implementing this provision apply to NIH contractors? Note, the guide notice is only for grants and recipients and subrecipients. Questions regarding contracts should be directed to the appropriate NIH contracting officer. Next slide. Okay, we wanted to update you on our implementation of the FCOI, or Financial Conflict of Interest policy, in ERA Commons IPF. As of December 1st of last year, applicants and recipients are required to submit an institutional FCOI policy to NIH via the ERA Commons IPF module. Note that delays in submitting this report at an institutional level can risk delaying the awarding of your grants. There is a compliance check in the system that will hold up the awarding of your grants. Note, a PDF of the FCO policy must be submitted by your SO via the IPF module under a new tab labeled policy documents. So make sure you're submitting in the appropriate location. And as I've mentioned a couple times, this is a submission of the FCOI policy at the institution level, not at the grant level. So you do not need to submit this with each individual grant, just at the institutional level. Next slide. As everyone knows, with the last year's COVID, we've had a lot of questions regarding PPE or personal protective equipment. NIH issued a guide notice regarding this issue last year. Recipients of clinical trial and clinical research awards are allowed to charge PPE as a direct cost when it aligns with your negotiated indirect cost rate at your institution and is consistent with cost principles and applied regardless of the source of funds. Additionally, recipients may charge up to $500,000 direct cost or less in a given budget period. Note, if it exceeds $500,000, recipients should apply for an S10 award, which we have come out with a new parent S10 award announcement, in which recipients can submit applications to provide funds solely for PPE costs for clinical trial and clinical research awards. And the guide notice again at the bottom outlining in more detail this information. Next slide. Okay. As always, NIH is committed to full transparency in reporting all research resources. And to this effort, NIH is clarifying application instructions and updating its forms. The updated forms, instructions and forms for the BioSketch and other support are to align with JCOR and other Fed-wide activities on research security and transparency. We have updated the data format for collections in alignment with NSF in order to reduce applicant and recipient burden. Note, these forms updates have been approved by OMB, and we are finalizing them as we speak, similar to the federal guide notices. We expect this guide notice on this issue to be come out this week or next, very soon, and implementation effective dates for this spring for this policy. Next slide. Okay, we have a few systems related updates that we want to make you aware of. One is the, as of October 30th, 2020 of last year, recipients are required to submit their trainee diversity reports electronically. This requirement applies to most training grant awards. There are a few exceptions, but as you can see on the slide, the majority of them it applies to. And note, our PPRs lacking electronically generated report will not generally be accepted, with exceptions for the K-12, KL2, etc. activity codes in which ERA will check whether an appointment has been made. If it is not, you will not be able to electronically generate a report, trainee diversity report, and you'll have to manually upload in Xtrain the report. And again, greater information is available in the guide notice we published last year, linked below. Next slide. Just a reminder, and as the slide notes, there's no change in this policy, but we just wanted to make you aware that, remind you that hyperlinks and URLs are not allowed unless specifically noted in a FOA or in the form field instructions. And hyperlinks and URLs should not be used to provide any information that is necessary for the review of an application. It needs to be in the application itself. But if a FOA or the form field instructions do allow for a hyperlink, we want you to format it as the full hyperlink rather than behind a specific word or phrase, as shown here on the slide. And again, a guide notice reminding about this policy. Next slide. And last but certainly not least, we have an update on the mandatory submission of the SF425 or FFR via the payment management system. As of last week, January 1st, NIH recipients are required to submit the FFR in PMS. Previously, this was done via ERA Commons FFR module, but now it has to be submitted via PMS. Note, this change does not impact your due dates on FFR, so even though it goes into effect on January 1st, it doesn't mean you have to suddenly take action unless you have a report due in the near future. And note a few details regarding this transition. If you are unable to locate your FFRs in PMS, please make sure you contact the ERA service desk. We've provided a link via the slide. The FFR form section 11 indirect expense is limiting to 10 FNA rates. So if in the rare case you have more than 10 FNA rates to report, you'll need to work with the service desk to work that out. And lastly, each FFR is limited to a single subaccount or corresponding document number that is noted in section 1 of your notice of award. And we've issued, as noted at the bottom, 2 guide notices related to this information. But as always, with any of these slides, be they policy or other, please feel free, if I don't answer your question today, to submit any questions you have to grantspolicy@od.nih.gov, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And with that, I think I have 11 questions.
Hi, Adam. Yes, thank you. And let's start with question number 1. Adam, may we use the new salary cap levels now in proposals and awards, or do we need to wait for the guide notice to appear?
I would wait until the guide notice is issued, but they are in effect, but yes.
Okay. Next question. When will an NOT be issued for the new salary cap?
Okay, I think I addressed this, but it should be in the next a week or 2. All the new fiscal year related guide notices should be issued in the next week or 2.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Compliance with NDAA Section 889 will cost institution millions. Is there any support to assist universities? And I just lost the question. It just disappeared off my screen.
I think the question was whether or not there'll be any institutional help in regards to the covered technologies statute. Not to my knowledge, but if there are any specific questions, I would recommend sending those to the policy inbox for more follow-up.
Okay, yeah, I just found the question again. So yeah, there is concern about the cost impact to the universities. The rest of the question is as follows: grandfathering or waiver process for cameras or other equipment. Does NIH have a waiver process? And second, an extended compliance enforcement date to allow universities an opportunity to meet the compliance standards. So, so does NIH have a grandfathering or a waiver process? And second, does NIH have a policy to extend compliance enforcement date to allow more time for universities to comply?
I believe those are addressed via the FAQs, but if not, I would recommend the detailed question go to the policy inbox so we can follow up.
Okay. Next question, regarding policy for FCOI submitting to the IPF. Is this our general FCOI policy or a policy specific for the institutional COI?
I guess I don't quite understand the distinction. Can they provide clarification?
Okay. So whoever submitted that question, please submit some clarification. Again, regarding the policy for COI submitting to the IPF. Is this a general COI policy or a specific policy for institutional COI is the question. All right, we'll go back to the remaining questions. With respect to the prohibition, RE covered telecommunication equipment, is it correct that grant funds means both direct and indirect cost funds?
Yes, I believe it was all grant funds.
Okay. Next question. Given policy on PPE for clinical research trial grants, are there any restrictions on purchasing PPE for non-clinical research? If no, would you please clarify that to all ICs?
The policy is only for clinical research and clinical trial grants.
Okay. Next question. You mentioned that BioSketch and other support is being coordinated with J-Core recommendations. Do you know where we can find a copy of J-Core recommendations?
Yes, I can try to find the link for that, but there was a J-Core report published. It should be linked likely in the guide notice that we issued on the subject, which is off the slide, but let me see if I can find that and I'll get back to you.
Okay. Next question. When will NIH notate the changes to the salary cap on their website or send a notice out to the community?
This was answered earlier. We'll be issuing a guide notice in the next week or two.
Okay. Next question. Is there any update for the discontinuation of the FCTR?
Oh, the federal cash transaction. I know that is still in the works, but I don't know the specific timeline on that.
Okay. I think this was already answered. If there are restrictions on PPE for non-clinical research, would you please make that clear what the restrictions are?
I believe that is issued in or addressed in the guide notice, but I can double. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it's addressed in the guide notice.
Okay. Whoops. Submitting FFRs is a problem due to the quarterly report. Is there a plan to uncouple the two or eliminate the quarterly report?
It's problematic to submit the quarterly report in PMS. Is that the? Yeah, I guess clarification on that question.
Okay. We'll move on to the next one. Are revised for previously submitted FFRs required to use PMS?
I believe so, but I would have to get back and verify that.
Okay, next question. For disclosing foreign financial interests for CFI, how does one define foreign? For example, Takeda Pharmaceuticals is based in Japan, but has American subsidiaries. Does an investigator have to disclose all travel because the company is based in Japan, even though the check may come from the American subsidiary?
The criteria for what constitutes foreign is defined in the NIH GPS, and we also have links on the website, which with frequently asked questions in terms of how that would they would determine whether or not it is foreign or not. So, and to answer the previous question on whether or not revisions to FFRs are required, they are required to be submitted via PMS.
Okay. Do you know when guidance on the changes for biosketches and other support will be coming out? There was a discussion about November, but have not seen it yet.
Yeah, we've made updates to that guidance within the GPS. Obviously, we haven't been able to publish that as of yet, but we are planning on issuing a standalone guide notice with that information and the updates, along with effective dates and implementation and all of that. I believe it's currently being drafted and should be released within the next week or two. So very, very soon.
Okay. Next question, when will the quarterly cash transaction report be eliminated?
I don't know on the timeline for that at this point. I know it's in process, and the goal is to eventually eliminate it. But yeah, I think at this point it is TBD on the exact timeframe.
Okay. Next question, institutional COI is a specific type of COI. FCOI is usually directed at the faculty member or investigator in any relationship she or he may have that might create bias. Institutional COI is a relationship that the institutions might have that could cause research bias. I think that's just a clarification.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the slide that I was reviewing regarding the submission via the IPF profile was for the institutional COI.
Okay. All right, we have a few more here, and we will have to be moving on. Does NIH plan to update? Oops. Sorry, folks, the question's moving. Does NIH plan to update NIH's harmonizing website related to foreign influence and other support in related reporting?
I'm not exactly sure what they mean by harmonizing website. We are updating, like I said, the GPS and related websites regarding foreign influence, other support, and we'll be doing that as part of issuing the guide notice and publishing the updated GPS. So if there's an additional website that this person is talking about, it will likely be updated.
Okay. Next question. It is problematic to submit FCTRs when there are changes, such as debits and credits, subsequent to the last FCTR report, but the current period report is due before the subsequent FCTR is due. So that sounds like an out of cycle disalignment.
Yeah, we're aware of the problems people have with regard to the cash transaction report, which I think is necessitating the long-term elimination of it. But again, TBD on when that will actually occur.
Okay. Similar question, problematic to submit the FFRs due to quarterly report lockdown when updates can't be made to the quarterly report. Quarterly report not matching FFRs because it's quarterly. We have to resubmit the quarterly with updates in order to submit the FFR when amounts don't match.
I believe as the slide addressed, if there are specific system issues in terms of submission, you would want to address your question to the ERA service desk, and they should be able to assist. My colleague just let me know that she believes they are investigating this currently, but it would probably be helpful for this person to notify them of the issue so that they can have it on their radar.
Okay. Is there clear guidance on how to address the above for final FFRs? PMS guidance is scarce and doesn't address various issues.
Yeah, that would be the same answer as my previous answer.
Okay. The JCO report has extensive discussion of non-financial conflicts of interest. Can you advise about what NIH will require in this domain?
That'll be noted in the guide notice, but we do lay out both financial and non-financial elements that would need to be addressed in the other support and associated forms, biosketch, etc.
Okay. All right. Last comment, I think, is just a clarification, which has already gone over. And so there was one last comment, which was a final thank you. And so I also express a thank you for your time, Adam. And given our schedule, we will move on to the next agency, which is NASA. And we have Kenitra Cobb and Mary Sladek presenting. Did you two want to handing it off to you? Over.
Hello, I'm Kenitra Cobbs, a senior policy analyst with the Grants Policy and Compliance Branch, and I'm located within the NASA Office of the Chief Financial Officer. And speaking with me today will be Mary Sladek, a NASA Research Program Manager with the Science Mission Directorate. You can move to the next slide. Okay, so this is just our updates, and I'll refer to Grants Policy and Compliance as GPC. You move to the next slide. Okay, so revisions of existing policies and processes. NASA updated Appendix B of the research terms and conditions that outlines the provisions requiring prior approval. So the revisions have been effective since November 12, 2020, and the research terms and conditions are accessible at the link listed on the screen. I've provided a chart that shows just a list of some of the updates in the appendix. So the use of current fair market value to determine the value of non-federal entity contributions of services and property for the purposes of cost sharing or matching was previously required and is now waived. Transfer of funds budgeted for participant support costs to other categories of expense that was previously waived, now it's required. Subawarding, transferring, or contracting out of any work under a federal award, including fixed amount subawards, that was previously waived and now is required. Changes in approved cost sharing or matching provided by non-federal entities, that was previously waived and is now required. And incumbent equipment acquired with federal funds was previously waived, and that is now required. You can move to the next slide, please. Okay. Our GCAM updates, which is our Grants and Cooperative Agreement Manual. We've just recently re-released the 2020 edition of the GCAM to reflect the recent changes to 2 CFR 200, and the GCAM has been effective since November 12, 2020, along with when the revisions were effective. Some notable updates. A new section on post-award routine monitoring has been created to clarify the NASA Shared Services Center and the Program Office post-award monitoring responsibilities. The section also describes recipients' sub-award monitoring responsibilities. We are removing the NASA procedures requirement, the NPR 9680, which pertains to advance payments for awards, and that policy was updated in our GCAM, and it's a new section 7.4 payments. We created a new section clarifying that program officers must use the research performance progress report data elements unless the program already was cleared by OMB. Also updated to reflect new requirements in 2 CFR 200.344, and it's stating that all final closeout documents, including final financial reports and final performance reports, are now due within 120 days rather than the 90 days, and after an award's periods of performance expires. And sub-award recipients still have 90 days to submit their final reports to their pass-through entities. And so the GCAM is accessible on our current NASA GPC external website, which is listed on the screen. However, in the very near future, GPC will have a new external webpage, so that's coming soon. And so just be on the lookout for that. Please move to the next slide. GPC will be releasing the 2021 edition of the NASA Proposals Guidebook later on this month, January 2020. Our guidebook outlines policies and procedures award applicants must adhere to when submitting responses to NASA's NASA's Notice of Funding Opportunity, a NOFO. Some of the highlights updated are the inclusion of the new section on special restrictions for non-US organizations under the submission requirements and restrictions. There's a new section that highlights that the proposal has two options to the submission process. So the one-step approach and the two-step approach. And the two-step approach has always been in the proposer's guide, but now we're sort of highlighting how to do the one-step approach. However, a NOFO will require whether or not you will use the two-step submission process. The guidebook is updated annually and of course is accessible on our current NASA GPC external website, which is listed on the screen. Also, once our new GPC external website is available, the guidebook will be accessible there as well. Go to the next slide, please. We're also releasing the 2021 edition of the NASA Unsolicited Proposals Guidebook in January as well. This guidebook hasn't been updated since 2016. For ones who are familiar and for the ones who are not, our office was under the Office of Procurement, and we've transitioned to the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. So now we are tackling this guidebook, and the guidebook does provide guidelines for the preparation of formal unsolicited proposals for those who wish to convey their creative methods or approaches to NASA. And so the major update for this guidebook is that the entire guidebook is being updated to correspond with our 2021 proposals guidebook and any 2 CFR 200 revisions. And moving forward, this guidebook will be updated annually, like our proposals guide, and it is the 2016 is currently available on the link listed on the screen, but the 2021 edition will be also available there. And then when the new external website is available, that guidebook too will be accessible there. Thank you. Move to the next slide, please. 14 CFR Part 1274 is our cooperative agreement with commercial firms regulation, which provides guidance to NASA cooperative agreements with commercial firms that has a mandatory cost share. So we are in the process of rescinding the regulation. On November 13th of 2020, the regulation was published in the Federal Register for comments, and then the public inspection closed December 2020, and we did not receive any comments. So we are moving forward. So we are rescinding regulation because it is duplicative of existing regulations governing all NASA grants and cooperative agreements. So that's like 2 CFR 200 and our NASA 2 CFR 1800. Also, NASA grant recipients, commercial recipients are no longer required to provide a 50% cost share. And grantees that are U.S. or foreign for-profit organizations, which is formerly commercial firms, must follow the policies and procedures appearing in subpart A through D of 2 CFR Part 200 and as supplemented by our 2 CFR Part 1800. And then the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the FAR at 48 CFR Part 30, cost accounting standards administration, and Part 31, contract cost principles and procedures, takes precedent over the cost principles in subpart E. So the final rule will be effective January 15th, 2020, and once fully rescinded, we will maintain a public available copy on our external website. So NASA's adopted some new policies. The first is the pre-award risk assessment. Risk assessments are conducted for all award recipients, regardless of the award amount, utilizing data from multiple government-wide repositories to determine the potential need for additional terms and conditions, and to inform the level of post-award monitoring required for a recipient to effectively manage NASA awards. So the pre-award risk assessment policy went into effect October 1st, 2020. Salary flexibilities. So administrative flexibilities in OMB Memo 2026, and it's the one that provides the extensions of allowability of salaries and other project activities that expired September 30th, 2020, and OMB did not extend those flexibilities. Therefore, NASA, we continue to exercise its authority to issue exceptions to the regulations on a case-by-case basis. And so recipients, they must first exhaust other available funding sources to sustain its workforce and implement necessary steps to save all operation costs. Recipients must retain appropriate records and documentation of their efforts to exhaust other funding sources. And NASA is not responsible for providing funds in addition to those already obligated to an award if the implementation of this flexibility results in a lack of award funding necessary to achieve the project's objectives. Next slide, please. So on November 12, 2020, our office released some policies that address appealing on NASA's decision to decline proposals for financial assistance. And that describes the types of reconsideration that NASA may make available for declined grant and cooperative agreement proposals submitted to NASA. This policy is located in our NASA proposals guide as well as our GCAM. Appealing a suspended or terminated award is our post-award appeals policy, which describes the types of reconsideration NASA may make available to award recipients concerning suspended or terminated grants and cooperative agreement. And last is the inclusion of the investigation and research misconduct in our GCAM, which describes NASA's process for reviewing allegations of research misconduct in accordance with our NASA guidance 14 CFR 1275. Next slide, please. Okay, so two policies that my office is presently working on is the conflict of interest policy and the post-awarding monitoring policy. So our office is revising our current existing conflict of interest policy to include disclosures of non-financial conflicts to address the need to disclose both foreign and domestic conflicts. And we are expecting to have that updated policy in the early part of this year. Our office is currently expanding our monitoring policy to address grant officers and technical officers post-award monitoring responsibilities and the required documentation applicants are required to produce during advanced monitoring, which are our site visits and desk reviews. Can you move to the next slide? All right, this is the Science Mission Director, and I'm going to hand over this part of the presentation to Mary Sladek.
Hi, this is Mary Sladek, and I'm with the Science Mission Directorate. Next slide, please. And I'm very happy to be here. I learn so much here. As many of you know, our major flagship multifaceted NASA research announcement is the Research Opportunities in Space and Earth Science, or ROSES as we like to call it. And there is a special, this slide just highlights 4 items. There are many, many more scores of opportunities in ROSES, but these are very recent. There is a due date of March 5th for current SMD assistance awardees. This means if you have funding from the Office of STEM Engagement or Science or Space Technology Mission Directorate or the Human Exploration Operations Mission Directorate, you are not eligible to submit to this. It's a call for COVID augmentations and funded extensions. There is no notice of intent. These are very small, very short proposals with limited budgets, and they can be processed on a rolling basis before the final due date of March 5th. There are limits and to who can apply for this, so please read carefully. We have the payloads and research investigations on the surface of the moon, or PRISM, Step 2 proposals for investigations that include development and flight of science-driven suites of instruments and technology demonstration payloads that will be delivered to the lunar surface of the moon via commercial lunar payloads services, or CLPS, and these are due, we are on the 3rd of February. There's an open source tools, frameworks, and libraries, OSTF. This seeks proposals that support projects that have made significant impacts to the Science Mission Directorate science community. So this is not a general call. This is for things that are under active development and in use It is not designed to provide support for legacy software or to develop brand new tools and libraries. These are due January 19th of this month, 2021. Finally, I'm highlighting the heliophysics flight opportunities for research and technology, or HFORT. This program encourages the development of technology that will enable investigation of NASA's heliophysics science questions. And I would like to encourage folks to look at this. Proposals are not due until March 26th, and heliophysics is a division within the Science Mission Directorate that certainly could use to receive some more proposals. Next slide, please. In addition to assistance awards, which is primarily the bread and butter of ROSES, the Science Mission Directorate offers very large announcements of opportunity, which are for complex contracts. We currently have out for community comment and review, with comments due February 25th, the two draft announcements of opportunity from our astrophysics division. These are the Astrophysics Medium Explorer, or MIDEX as we call it, and also an element as part of a draft element to be amended, to be added as an amendment, but not yet, to the third standalone Mission of Opportunity Notice, affectionately known as SALMON. Please email comments to Patricia M. Knezik at nasa.gov. In addition, there is final text available for the Earth Venture mission, which is an element of the Earth System Science Pathfinder program. And it solicits principal investigator or PI-led science investigation. Mandatory notices of intent are due tomorrow. So sorry if you're just hearing about it now. Questions and comments are accepted only via email addressed to Kenneth W. Jux at nasa.gov. Next slide, please. Additionally, I want to bring up some news about how NASA sets its goals for Science Mission Directorate. We have a new division that joined us in July, the Biological and Physical Sciences division, and they have just started, thanks to the Academy, their decadal survey of biological and physical science research in space. The time span is 2023 to 2032. So they're called decadal surveys because they are community-driven, bottom-up studies that aim to formulate a consensus around research questions and comprehensive strategies and vision for this research field. Really encourage you to learn more about this by visiting the resources that are available on our website at science.nasa.gov/biological and physical and decadal survey. And you can also, on this slide, there's a hyperlink to the National Academies, where is another opportunity to participate in commenting. We have resources available for the heliophysics community for planning purposes for the Geospace Dynamics Constellation mission. Again, a mission is an announcement of opportunity, and it is really large. And so I encourage you to go, if you are unfamiliar with these kind of opportunities, go take a look at what's available from our Science Mission Directorate's Science Office of Mission Assessments, or SOMA, at the NASA Langley Research Center in Virginia. Additionally, also in planning for another announcement of opportunity, the potential for a New Frontiers 5. The New Frontiers program conducts principal investigator-led space science investigations in SMD's planetary programs under a not-to-exceed cost cap. And questions and feedback on current community announcements are due by February 19th, and they are addressed to Kurt Niebuhr at nasa.gov, kurt.niebuhr at nasa.gov. And you can visit the past funded announcements and the perm acquisition page, the future announcements, sorry. You can visit the permanent acquisition page, which is on the SOMA website, newfrontiers.larc.nasa.gov/new and F5. Next slide, please. Additionally, the Planetary Science Division is hosting a virtual town hall on January 21st, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. On this slide, and I will not read them all, you will find various ways to join this meeting, WebEx or phone. There are global call-in numbers from video systems or applications, including Microsoft Link and Microsoft Skype. I do want to encourage folks to, if they can't weigh in, this is about the plans to eliminate due dates for 7 funding opportunities, which are part of ROSES. For the research and analysis program, there is a belief based on conversations with NSF and other members of the community that no due dates is far preferable to having deadlines, that this is less work. Let us know what you think about this, either in the chat here or contact the point or join us for the virtual town hall. Next slide, please. I'm pleased to give greetings from my boss, Michael H. New, who is the Deputy Associate Administrator for Research, or DAR. And he has, starting in mid-February, he will have an assistant DAR, Dan Evans, who is currently a program scientist in the astrophysics division, but most recently has been piloting the dual anonymous peer review process. Again, dual anonymous peer review is when the proposers and the reviewers don't know each other's identity. And that's very quickly, but you can certainly, we certainly have this available. There's resources online on our science.nasa.gov/researchers pages about dual anonymous peer review if you want to hear more about it. We are currently looking for reviewers for our future investigators in NASA Earth and Space Science and Technology program. It supports graduate student research projects. It is not a fellowship program. A lot of times we get questions and say, hey, am I eligible for this? It's like, nope, it's not about eligibility. If you have a research project, talk to your AOR, talk to your PI, and these are decisions that are made at the submitting level. These proposals are due on February 4th, and they're short. There's a short URL provided for the NASA solicitation and proposal integrated review and evaluation system. If you are using grants.gov to submit, which is fine, you still need to register in NSPIRES so that we will be able to review your proposal. Next slide, please.
All right, well, this concludes the updates for NASA. These are the primary contacts for the FDP. That's myself, Kenitra Cobbs, Anthony Crank, who is the chief of the grants policy and compliance branch, as well as Mary Sladek. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Kenitra. I appreciate NASA presenting at FDP. It's good to have you guys back. So what I'm going to do now is we have 1, 2, 3. We have 4 presentations left. So what I'm going to do is have the presenters go through their presentation, and we will hold questions until after the 4 remaining agencies have presented. Is Heidi Custer online? This is from DHS. All right, let's see, I got a little chat.
I'm waiting for my presentation. I'm waiting for the video to show up. Okay, can you see me now?
We need to, Shanae, we need to bring up the DHS presentation, not EPA.
Yeah, Shanae, if you could just go through this. EPA, unfortunately, last minute wasn't able to join us, so we're just skipping ahead.
Okay, while she's skipping ahead, I am Heidi Custer. I'm with Department of Homeland Security in the Division of Financial Assistance Policy and Oversight. We are the headquarters office, so we coordinate with 7 to 8, depending on who gets funding that year, different offices within DHS. We can go ahead to the next slide, please. And you can see here our mission. In the interest of time and stuff, I'm not going to read all this. One of the key things we do, however, is we represent DHS in government-wide working groups. Next slide, please. For example, one of our assistant directors, Mary Tutman, spent her entire summer going over the uniform guidance when they were ready to update it. She and the working group went over 2,000 comments that were submitted by the public and other government offices. So let me see, for the next slide, please. They recently released an actual crosswalk to the changes that they made, and the link is provided on here. And that's very helpful. They put it out in a spreadsheet, and for each specific section that was updated, they have it broken down by tabs on the spreadsheet for that specific section. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to skip. Sinead, if you could skip to slide 9, please. What we're skipping, folks, is OMB's memos that they put out relating to COVID-related funding. There were 4 of them, and the last one, memo 2026, extended the deadlines. And since they're mostly expired, we're going to go ahead and skip these. You can look back on those. So we're going to start again with the next slide that's FY20 funding for that. Thank you. So these are the different components that we work with here. So as you can see, countering weapons of mass destruction funded $63 million. And thought I'd add a little bit, let you know what types of programs they fund. They fund a couple programs that fall under supporting the cities. And they focus in on funding to different major cities in that one. They have BioWatch, and they also have a nuclear forensic expertise development program. These aren't all that they have, but these are the type of programs that these agencies would fund. CISA funded $27 million. A lot of their programs fall under SLTT, the state, local, tribal, and territorial projects. One of them is, for example, is the indicators of compromise. Then there's also a rural emergency medical communication demonstrator project. So as you can see, they fund a plethora of topics that we have there. FEMA obviously gets 99% of DHS's budget. This past year, they got $72 billion, which included $49.5 billion in additional COVID funding from the CARES Act. And this is where the majority of COVID funding went to DHS, is to FEMA. Their main programs include the assistance to firefighter grants, and they also have 8 programs that fall under the preparedness grants. In fact, we just received the last 3 of those 8 NOFOs this morning. They include things like Inner City Passenger Rail Program, the Transit Security Grant Program, Inner City Bus, Tribal Homeland Security Grant Program, Port Security, and so on. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they receive 1 award every year, and that's been for $305,000 over the past 5 years. It's the same amount. And they primarily award NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Although they've funded them every year, OMB has had a push to compete programs. So they did compete it 2 years ago, and NCMEC still came out the winner in that competitive program. Science and Technology funded $31 million. Their lead programs focus on the centers of excellence in their university-based awardees. And they also have violence reduction and threat prevention evaluation type programs. USCIS received $5 million for citizenship, easy for me to say, citizenship, education, and training, as well as the Refugee and Asylum Assimilation Program. The Coast Guard is a little bit different type of funding. They had $110 million, but their funding is not appropriated. They get their money from a trust fund through the Department of Interior, and they fund boating safety initiatives, and they're required to award funds across all 50 states. So as you can see, we have a wide variety that we oversee in FAPO. Most of the DHS recipients within this group work with components that FAPO coordinates with an office out of the Office of Procurement Operations called GFAD, Grants Financial Assistance Division. So in my last couple seconds, I would ask if you could put in the Q&A box which component, if your office has any DHS funding, which component you would receive it from out of those 5, CWMD, CISA, ICE, S&T, or USCIS. What I'd like to do in the future is reach out to your direct component to see if I can get information from them that would help specifically with how you relate with DHS. I'll reach out to them and we'll be able to get back to you when we have our next federal awarding agency component updates. So that's about all I have. As Debbie said, we're holding questions, but if you can, in the Q&A, just add whether you work with S&T or anything like that. That'll help me for the next one. So thanks so much for your attention and have a great day.
Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate DHS being part of this agency update. And we will continue reach out to you, sooner rather than later. We don't necessarily have to wait, 3 months
Right.
to have those conversations. Next up is Air Force OSR, and Calvin Scott will be presenting just with audio, so he will not be on video. All right, Calvin, are you online?
Yes, can everyone hear me clear?
You can speak up a little bit louder.
Okay. Let me see. My computer may be. Okay.
That's much better.
Is this a little better?
That's
Okay.
much better. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about the video snafu. I have yet to go in the office to get my laptop updated, so my video is it's not functioning for me correctly right now. But my presentation will be fairly short, as we don't have any current updates. We are working on some things that I'll talk to. However, we don't. I didn't want to go too. I didn't want to put anything on the slides because there would be a bunch of questions that, based on what we were developing, I'm not prepared to answer. All right. So my name is Calvin Scott. I'm a senior procurement analyst for the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. I manage the open BAAs, which are our conference BAA and our traditional BAA. Next slide. All right, so this is the agenda, and I'll go ahead and jump right in. Next slide. Okay, so this is just a breakdown of all of our technical directorates throughout the United States, and we, as you see, we have a few overseas. Next slide, please. All right, and this is more of, I guess, giving more information about us, and the primary focus, as you see, highlighted on the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. These are our this is what we primarily fund here. However, we do have a connection with all of the Air Force directorates, and anytime any of the research shows any promise, our program officers are charged with connecting the universities or small businesses with the relevant technical directorates to attempt to fast track the research into, possibly a prototype or furthering whatever direction it's going in. All right, next slide. Okay, and at the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, we find, form, fund, and forward the research. Next slide. All right, this is our Air Force, our grant process. This is a simple illustration. However, the most important part, or most important thing on this one is reach out to your program managers or program officers and start the discussion early on in the process while you're developing a proposal. Typically, this happens via white paper. If you should run into any problems getting in contact with the PO, I recommend first ensuring that you're using the actual contact information from the BAA. If you use the PO's personal email addresses, these sometimes get inundated with emails. So, but they are we are closely monitoring their response time. So their portfolio specific email addresses are the best points of contact. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our these are the research areas from our current BAA. We are in the process of posting a updated BAA for 2021, and it's going to include some extra topics in the way of, we have the Space Force that just came online that we'll also be supporting, and we'll find out to what level of support we'll be providing within the next couple of months. And the FDP presentation that I believe is going to be in May, that one we're going to have a lot of stuff to put out, because we'll have updates to our RPPR, we'll have a new BAA out. So I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of questions and just a lot of good communication during that time. But these are the current portfolios that we mentioned, and in our BAA we also kind of have a other topics section, and that section just kind of is like a catch-all for anything else that may be interesting to the Air Force. All right, next slide. All right, and this slide is really just to, I guess, let some of the newer to the Air Force potential grantees. Hello? Okay. Yeah, so we encourage you to, reach out and, reach out to the POs to make sure your proposal has strong technical relevance. Strong technical merit, Air Force relevance, because sometimes, the proposal will be great, but it's really not in the direction that the Air Force is going in. But I still encourage you to reach out to the program officers, because these program officers are in, they have networking opportunities where they could connect you with someone for the Army, someone for the Navy, DARPA, NSF, because all of them are colleagues, and they all work together to ensure whatever the mission's needs are met. And go to the next slide, please. Okay, and this is just more information in regards to understanding what makes a proposal more competitive. All right, next slide. And this is also an important slide, in my opinion. A lot of times, the underserved universities may not have the experience with the Air Force or the government, period. And a good way to kind of get into obtain funding is to look at forging partnerships. We have Center of Excellence BAAs. We have of course, the Silver Stir, where you can partner with industry to work on research. These are just some of the opportunities that we have, but I encourage you to, definitely visit our website and our landing page, and it kind of points at all the different opportunities, and reach out to the program managers, program officers, as they can kind of tell you like what funding they have, or what their specific process is. All right, next slide. Okay, and this slide is just depiction of the funding opportunities within AFOSR. As you see, we have the traditional grants, we have the additional fundings, opportunities through MIRI grants, the DURPs, which are issued once a year. We have Minerva that we partner with OSD to work on, and several other opportunities. Our solicitation site is going to be grants.gov. So just make sure you are registered with grants.gov and everything is good to go when you're ready to submit your proposal. Next slide, please. All right, and I know we're going to be holding questions, but I will be on the line to try to answer any questions up until 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Calvin. This is Debbie. All right, folks, we've already gone over, we've got 2 more minutes left, so I'm going to yield. The O&R slides are pretty much self-explanatory, so I'm going to yield my time over to Susan Sloan from GWEAR. Susan, are you on?
I am, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You can go ahead and skip the O&R slides. Go ahead and progress through.
Okay, so I'll try and make this very quick as well. So my name is Susan Sloan. I direct the Government University Industry Research Roundtable, or GWEAR. Next slide, please. GWEAR is yet another acronym, but I need to make it clear here in this federal update session that GWEAR does not represent a federal agency. In fact, GWEAR is the acronym for the unit within Policy and Global Affairs Division within the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine that serves as neutral convener of the FDP. So next slide, please. So our mission is really to improve the research enterprise of the United States by successfully resolving cross-sectoral issues that prevent the U.S. research enterprise from reaching its full potential. Our mission is achieved by convening senior-most representatives from government, universities, and industry to frame the critical issues, followed when appropriate by execution of activities designed to address specific cross-sector impediments to achieving a healthy, vibrant research enterprise. I should note that the participation of the federal science and technology leadership in an open dialogue and informal exchange of ideas precludes our making any formal recommendations or offering specific advice to federal agencies. Instead, the roundtable seeks to stimulate new approaches by direct engagement of government, universities, and industry leaders in their respective spheres. So next slide, please. We are a membership entity. We are directed by 2 co-chairs, one from industry, one from university. We also are governed by a leadership council. And I might note that our previous speaker, the plenary speaker, NCAT's director, Chris Austin, has long served on that leadership council along with the heads of other federal research agencies and a select set of executives from both companies and universities. We also have university industry partners. These are organizational members. At present, there are 51 organizations that participate as members of GWEAR. Next slide, please. So this is just to give you a sense of the meetings and the topics that we address. The topics that GWEAR addresses are cross-disciplinary, they're cross-sector. They come to the fore at the behest of our membership writ large. And so as you can see, over the past year, we started with the role of research and technology in the changing ocean economy. The summer session was originally intended to focus on research and the new space enterprise. However, given the situation with COVID, we switched to a session on resilience of research enterprise during the COVID-19 crisis, and then concluded last year with a session on learning from rapid responses, innovation, and adaptation to the COVID crisis. We, at the end of each GWEAR meeting, we write up a proceedings of a workshop in brief, a PIB, and that document is usually a short summary of what transpired during these meetings. They are free and available on the GWEAR website at www.nas.edu/GWEAR, G-U-I-R-R. Next slide, please. So this brings us to our first meeting of 2021, which will be occurring starting in February. February 10th is the first session. And because we're in a virtual environment, we have changed our format, much like we did with the last two meetings of 2020. So rather than a face-to-face meeting, much like FDP, we are doing these virtual sessions and a series of workshops. Next slide, please. And in this case, we'll be doing 6 90-minute virtual workshops designed to explore current challenges to U.S. leadership in science and innovation. The first 3 sets are really intended to look at kind of identifying the problems. And then the second 3 workshops are really looking at possible solutions. So you can see it's quite a broad mix there. We're looking at taking stock of the challenges to U.S. science and technology leadership, strengthening the intersection of science, foreign policy, and international development assistance policy. Third is improving the U.S. innovation environment with public-private partnerships, which is frankly at the core of everything that GWIR does, is looking at public-private partnerships. Fourth, demonstrating the value of international research collaboration. Fifth workshop is on maintaining U.S. leaderships in international standards bodies. And sixth is supporting international students and researchers in the United States. Next slide, please. We also host regular webinars. They're typically on a near monthly basis. We take a breather at the end of the year, as we did this last year. So this just gives you a set of the webinars that we host. These are free, openly available to anyone. They are 1 hour in length. They're typically held at 1 p.m. Eastern time. You can see the diversity of the focus of these various webinars here. I want you to go to the next slide, please. Our next webinar is set for January 27th, and we're going to look at the AI Institute for Next Generation Food Systems. Again, this topic came forward from Mars Corporation, which is one of our member entities. We solicit the information, or we solicit the topics to be addressed in our webinars, much like we do with our topics for the meetings from the membership at large. But in the case of the webinars, these are open and free to any and all. So if you'd like to be kept apprised of these events or others, please subscribe to the GWIR mailing list at the website offered on the screen. And next slide, I believe, concludes. So there was a race through on that one. And I would like to just acknowledge that Lillian Andrews, you notice, is a shared staff person. So I mentioned that GWIR serves as neutral convener of the FDP. We also have shared staff. So Lily works both with GWIR and FDP, as well as several others that focus specifically on GWIR. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan, and welcome back. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
All right, we are over by several minutes. So I just want to thank all our federal agency participants. I think the good news is we went over time because we had a lot of agencies that wanted to share information. So I think that's a good reason to go over our time allotted. So if there are questions that were not answered, they will be answered online. And I'm going to hand it back to Lillian. Thank you.